Ladies and gentlemen, and organizers, first I want to thank the organizers for inviting me here. Referring to the morning session, I feel extremely happy. I feel extremely happy to have the opportunity to speak in front of an audience from one of the educational superpowers, Korea. I've been asked to speak about the future of universities. Universities work in different contexts, and universities are extremely creative. So whatever you offer, solution you offer as new, somebody has already invented it. And what is new and path-breaking in one country can be a standard solution in another one. So even though we try to have, and I try to have a global perspective, our outlook is to some extent always determined by our own background. So therefore I just wanted to say that mine, of course, is the Nordic one, which is, I think, in a way, a rather interesting combination of the elitism of high-level research and equality. As to elitism, as you see here, there are 7 Nordic universities on the Shanghai list among the 100 top universities in the world. So it's only US and UK that have more on the list than the Nordic ones. But at the same time, we are quite equal. There are small variations in employability between universities, between alumni of different universities in the Nordic countries. There is a relatively equal recruitment to universities. And there is the tuition-free education that makes it possible for most citizens to go to university. So with this background, I go to the 4th industrial revolution, which is, of course, a challenge for all, which both the 3rd and the 4th, in fact, revolutions have a deep impact on our lives and future. We know that the music business has been forced to adapt in a profound way. Traditional media struggle to survive. Well-branded department stores have difficulty in coping with net-based distribution channels. And this is just a few examples. The interesting issue is about universities. Are we prepared for this? We increasingly face the same pressures in the university sector. And in order to survive, universities do have to understand and adapt to the profound changes which we see. Personally, I have no doubt about their ability to do so. Universities have existed for 1,000 years and adapted to very many changes in society, so we will be able to adapt to these changes as well. But at the same time, I should say that I'm convinced that in 10 years, universities will look very, very radically different from the present ones, but I'm not completely certain in what ways. And I'm speaking only about the educational challenges posed by digitalization, globalization, and the 4th industrial revolution. Of course, in the research sector, we find similar challenges with open science, big data, and similar catchwords showing that research is equally much affected. But I will be speaking about education only. And of course, all revolutions have their victims. Doomsayers have told us that universities might be found among those, like just I mentioned here, one citations. citation, if universities fail to rethink their strategic situations and business models, they may well fall to the common educational tsunami. And I could put up 100 similar citations from various sources. And the MOOCs and the massive online open courses was the first warning signal. I've seen Wonderland, said Sebastian Thrun, already several years ago. So why would one bother to study at a local university when you can get a MOOC from one of the leading universities in the world? In other words, in the same way as e-commerce challenges department stores and Netflix challenges the film and broadcasting industry, we might expect similar challenges in the university sector as well. And these challenges are of three kinds. First, as I already mentioned, of course, the business model, or the model for the economical model for universities to function on. And here we have, of course, very many differences throughout the world. Secondly, the pedagogical approach of universities is and has to be quite radically changed. And of course, then we face, thirdly, the usefulness of the product, the output that we achieve, the education that is given, which has been discussed very much here previously, and certainly is the main theme of this conference. So, a few words about these challenges. As to the business model, some expect the advent of low-touch universities, which offer low-fee competition with the traditional high-touch, expensive universities, just like Ryanair in the air. There we have examples of this already. The most radical competition models, which are already in operation, include the professorless university, administered only by low-paid course mentors, or the university-less community of academics earning the tuition fees themselves. However, I won't go into detail in this respect. The concern about budget competitors is obviously more acute in high-fee education societies than, for instance, in our society, which is tuition-free, where the commercial logic is lacking. But we, of course, on the other hand, face other challenges of similar kind, are faced with challenges related to public support, making the brands of universities, the social responsibility of universities, much more important also for their earning models. Secondly, we need a new pedagogics. The advent of the touchpad generation to the universities clearly challenges traditional ways of teaching and learning. For a person used to navigating on a touchpad already before being able to read, and they do, and consulting Google and Wikipedia and all other sources whenever new information is needed, a pedagogics that still to a considerable extent is based on the idea of transferring existing knowledge and information, is not appealing. And this was discussed extensively also this morning, that this kind of transfer of knowledge model is outdated for many reasons. For the new generation also, concepts such as time and place have a very different meaning and are much less important than for older generation. And this puts additional pressure on universities in making their competitive strategies. The universities have to be able to cope with this. According to international surveys, students do experience this need as well. They demand and this is surveyed knowledge, they demand a full use of virtually available content, full use of social media, much more flexibility and less constraints related to time, cooperation, the possibility to learn real cooperative skills, working together, similar skills. Of course, in the global world, multilingualism and internationality, and last but not least, labor market relevance, in other words, the usefulness of the teaching and the exams. And that leads us to the third challenge, the usefulness of the product we offer. And I should say that even in the world of digitalization, there is still some value in locality, and in fact a growing value of locality. And the universities have to be able to demonstrate their strengths in this respect, relating to the fact that universities are places where different generations meet, the experienced researchers meet the young and brave new minds of each new generation of students. These are places where you really can perform the unity of research and teaching in the true Humboldtian sense. So, to combine this knowledge, what is essential is for universities is to show that they can still produce surplus value for those coming to universities, which means, of course, as I mentioned already, first, that all virtually available educational content must be taken into account and used in active manner, open access to publications, data, educational materials, pedagogics that builds on blended learning and similar approaches is, of course, a central thing. The goal is not so much to the transfer of information and knowledge, but to learn the capacity to find, process and create new knowledge. The goal has to be to intertwine research and teaching, take the Humboldtian ethos seriously in the way that each student also is directly connected with the top-level research at the universities. In addition, of course, you have to acknowledge that the brands of the universities are much more important, and the brands do contain more than just the pedagogics and the research done at the university. It focuses very much on the interaction on university campus, the networks you build with the teachers, with your student fellows on the campuses, and so on. That's all things which you get at a university, and which become obviously much more important many times than the actual content of education. As the virtual world redefines our relations to time and place, this also must change the modus operandi of universities. We have to cope with continuous tensions between timeliness and timelessness in a flexibility. We need a new flexibility in a radical way. The flexibility has been said to be an essential part of a modern higher education system. I will return to this at the end. So, what we need is to be able to give a product that essentially is an education for an uncertain future, where the jobs will be the job structure will be changed in a very radical way, as we heard already this morning, where the most important things are things like giving analytical and critical skills to students. And if I speak to people hiring students from large firms, their answer is often, well, it's good that they have an academic degree. We don't care so much if it's in history or philosophy or mathematics, as long as it shows that they have a good analytical and critical skill. Those are, these are good persons. So these skills are often much more important than the content, which is only a means to deliver these skills. Of course, research skills in the Humboldtian connection between research and teaching, these skills become important. Creativity, that's really the buzzword of today, but that's something where the universities can be much more advanced than today. Learning skills, and finally, as I mentioned many times before, flexibility. We need a new and radical type of flexibility within the universities, giving the students possibility to creatively and in their own way build their exams and build their future. So you could also say that flexibility contains a demand for putting down the silos, for which university, I must admit, universities are very well known to be very efficient in building silos, but both between themselves, between the universities and the societies, and within themselves, between disciplines, faculties, departments, whatever. They are very experienced and silo builders. But we have to bring them down. The university must be able to and willing to break many boundaries. A university that wants to be successful in a world of quite fluid conceptions of time and place, with a multitude of opportunities for the young and talented, has to be brave enough to break the boundaries of disciplines, educating real problem solvers who can contribute to the solving of societal challenges, the grand societal challenges across the board of disciplines. But we also have to be able to work more closely than before, together with schools, other institutions of secondary education, to provide new and flexible learning paths. For those very talented, perhaps already at school, you can do the university education and vice versa. We have to be able to interact very closely with societal institutions and the labor market, accepting a flexible oscillation between work and study. And this was touched upon this morning as well, that we cannot anymore see education as one separate part of our lives. This is something which we have to return to continuously, and that presupposes a much more radical cooperation between the labor market and the universities. And we have to accept the relativization of locality and temporality by including the virtual and the global in the local. So, as I see it, a university that breaks such kinds of boundaries is a university that is deeply connected to society, both locally and globally. Such a university is a university that fulfills its task in the best possible way. Well, I thank you for listening to me, and I hope to welcome you all in Helsinki in due course. Thank you.